This is Unravel 2, which is the sequel to the very surprisingly amazing Unravel, which starred Yarny, the little yarn guy, on a journey to sort of recapture memories. And we have our kind of lead here. Gets stranded from a boat, that's the start of this game. And as you can see in a sec here, he loses his connection, which sends him into complete dismay, as that's sort of his guide and sense of progression. We're going to jump ahead here. As you can visually see, this is a stunning game. It uses real nature, real environments, a real place. And in the sequel, things are greatly changed. We get much more of a focus on the city life as opposed to the countryside, or like the beach and so forth from the first game. There are cars, there are parks, you're inside a full city, and you're following these two kids as they are running away from people, so there's a sense of urgency, but it's done sort of, again, in the sense of memories, kind of, to a degree. They're kind of ghost shadows in your world. So right off the bat, Yarny gets a friend. That's adorable, because the entire game can be played in co-op. Only local co-op, though, no online co-op, which is extremely disappointing. I really thought, being an EA original title, they might have the online co-op, but that is not the case here. So for showcasing the game, I thought the best way to do so would be the tutorial, because it shows off kind of the new features. So it's entirely cooperative. You have your two guys. Hello. Red Yarny, blue Yarny, and you can just play like in local multiplayer if you'd like. It's sort of cool. You can also alter the appearance of your Yarny. You can change like the body, the eyes, the color of your Yarny. You can have whatever kind of Yarny you want. It's all canon now. Crazy, right? But we go with a red Yarny, because that's more classic for me, and you can also switch between them. And you've got your two Yarny characters. You can combine your Yarnies, and you can sort of, you know, just adventure together. It's really lovely in that sense. So this is very much a physics-based sort of title, in the sense that you're pushing objects, dealing with liquids, manipulating things, and that works very well for it. So being a cooperative experience, things are very different this time, from like the way you play it, to the puzzles you solve, and just generally how the movement is. Now it works mostly very well when you're playing by yourself, because I mean, you can definitely see that this is geared towards co-op. The entire experience is 2 players. All of the puzzles are 2 players. It kind of comes across as, yeah, the ball of yarn there. That's kind of what I was showing earlier, where you can switch between the characters. The entire thing is kind of like a Lego game, sort of, where you have those interactions, but even more so focused on the actual co-op elements of gameplay. With that, I found that some elements were a bit harder with playing by yourself, where it seems like, you know, some elements were designed specifically for co-op, and that makes it kind of harder to manage. And those are ones where you're sort of moving objects along like a pole or so forth, because there's wheels, and they're kind of like bundled onto wires, and you drag them across, and you swing from them and stuff, and that part just felt a little bit more difficult. And then you can split apart at any time, get back together. You can climb off one another. Again, this being the tutorial, you're going to kind of see that all in motion. They also focused on more of a cinematic journey this time too, where there's like chase scenes, and it feels much more story focused. Now, I don't know if the visuals are better. Obviously, being on the Xbox One X, this is enhanced, you know, with that high resolution, so it does look better, but it doesn't have like a graphical difference because it is just nature. Obviously, it's gonna look better because the text's gotten better. But I mean, it's got a real look to it, so the art style doesn't particularly change. And I think it's just absolutely adorable, like the characters, and I don't know, the co-op was a nice touch. It really was a good idea to do that. But it would have been nicer to have the online multiplayer components to it. Ooh, so you can play with somebody else online. That would have been really nice, but whatever. It's still a great time. So swinging is also something that's kind of a big deal here. The world is very alive, but it's focused. It's a linear experience. It's not something that's open world. You generally, you know where you're going. You know how to get there, and if you don't, they have a hint system. No! So with this hint system, it's a couple hints per level. And it kind of lets you know what exactly you're supposed to do if there are like certain... Like, it's very specific hints. They're kind of vague, but at a certain point, when you reach that hint and you need it, you'll be like, oh, okay. That makes sense. As far as enemies go, obviously, you know, we still have that connection to nature and big animals and scary things. Like I mentioned, there's cars and so forth. They're kind of deadly. They're not specifically going after you like critters would, but you get what I mean. They're environmental hazards. On top of that, there's also the whole kind of creatures. Like there's these black creatures that come out. They're kind of creepy and scary looking, and I don't know how to describe them, and they kind of just work along the environments, being these weird frizzled creatures. And if they get one of your poor buddies, you know, basically they'll go all Infinity War on you, and you like fuzz away, kind of dust away. It's very, very unsettling. So there's also cool things you can do with your Yarnies. You can get them into an open spot. You can do little tiny, like, you know, indicators. You can be like, hello, and hi, and you do this on the D-pad. Shake your head, no, and I don't know. It's just adds to the adorable qualities of the experience. And I think they did a really good job of making this a very beautiful game, and one that's really well done. And it's just, you know, it's completely narrative driven. It's linear, but there's a good challenge in the sense of what you're trying to figure out how to do things. I mean, you can get the hints if you need help, but it's best to sit there and actually figure out the puzzles in this one, because they're never too hard. They're mostly logical, whether you're pushing objects to make bridges, or using objects, or manipulating them, or manipulating the characters. You know, that's mostly what everything is. There's also collectibles again to collect. Obviously, collectibles being collectible, you know, you get it. Many elements do return. Your hub is sort of a lighthouse this time around. You know where you're getting the memories from, and that's where you're picking the chapters. I guess we can just climb up. I don't know what I'm doing here. Yeah, swinging along and don't need to overcomplicating things. And then you can like attach yourself, and they're fairly creative with the puzzles you can do in this one. But a lot of the game mechanics do return from the original. You're just sort of duplicating it and doing some new cool fun things along the way. And I think they have created a very compelling follow-up to the original, because I absolutely loved... Here are the hints here. I loved the first one. It was kind of too difficult. I think this one's a little bit more accessible in that regard. But it still has some difficult qualities to it. Obviously, for those that want the more hardcore thing. You can also do slow motion and so forth, if you'd like. Can't remember. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to tie this. Slow motion segments just to make things easier when you're doing like jumps and so forth. This is one of those always mechanics there nearby, is where you're pushing objects into the string. You got to think of it as in a 3D world, which it is, but it's presenting it in a 2D interface. Get out of the way, green Yarny guy. I just love how they balance, and they're like I don't know, really fun just to play with. Great little characters. I actually have my own Yarny that I made. Yeah, out of yarn. So I love the game that much.